Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Good Logic Memorial Day. I'm never really sure whether Happy Memorial Day sounds like a weird thing to say when you consider the context of what Memorial Day is about. So I will say that I hope that you find Memorial Day to be uplifting and perhaps take a moment to remember those who have fallen in the most noble of services. So yesterday, Robert Barnes called out LawTube, which I don't, LawTube, as we know, is really a genre. It's not like people; it's a genre of type of podcasting, which I certainly engage in. When people use the term LawTube, I think most people properly include me in that group of persons who engage in analyzing the law online. And he said that he hasn't seen enough people talking about the constitutional issues. Specifically, he cited First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment issues that all surround the ongoing saga with Nick Rekieta and the arrest that happened last week. And I thought what he said was interesting and worthy of further discussion, which is something that I wanted to discuss. And yet at the same time, I knew that if I start having this conversation, people will take that out of context. People will misunderstand the nature of that conversation, which is why before I can even begin that dialogue, before I can even talk about constitutional issues that Robert Barnes was addressing, which I do think merit discussion, we need to sort of stop for a moment and assess a situation here and the nature of stories that we cover, the nature of stories that people in LawTube cover, how this situation is obviously a little bit different from a normal situation. And we also need to discuss the realities of a court of law, how a court of law tends to work, how we idealize a court should work, which is very different from how it actually works. And then we need to also assess the realities of the court of public opinion, which is completely separate from those first two. And I think that these are important when we're especially because I'm analyzing a situation which everyone here knows Nick Rekieta is a friend of mine, and I only want the best for Nick. What's good for Nick in the long term? So I really wanted to break down these three different avenues so we can understand why it is that a discussion could or should be had. And then in that context and break down, okay, this is how the law actually works. We can safely rely as to how this is likely to play out versus how things perhaps should work or changes that we might wish to see in how things work versus life. And these are very, very important distinctions. And when I'm talking about a story, I'm covering a story involving someone that everyone here knows is a friend of mine. First and foremost, I put aside the law and I definitely put aside the theoretical constitutional elements to it. And I look at life. What do I want for my friend? Okay. So that's why, and I knew that if I start talking about the constitutional elements right away, people are going to start jumping to all sorts of conclusions as to where I'm going and what I'm going to be saying and what the objective behind what I'm saying is. And far too frequently, they will be grossly mistaken as to what the nature of that is. So before I begin entertaining that, and I expect to go down a discussion, a rabbit hole discussion of the constitutional issues with you on locals. That part is going to be exclusively for locals. But I wanted that anyone who's watching this can understand that first and foremost, this is what I want for Nick and for Nick's family. Okay. I want Nick in my ideal world. I want Nick to never, ever, ever, ever again in his life touch narcotics. Ever. He knows this. I want him to never, I want him that let's assume that there's some element of truth to the statements that we've all seen online. Not I don't know. I'm simply saying, just starting from presumption, because I am part of the court of public opinion. You can't help but think, okay, there's got to be some truth here to what they're saying, and that could be a mistaken impression. But assuming there's any truth to it at all, any, that I want him to get help, and I want him to never ever ever touch narcotics again. I don't want him drinking alcohol ever again until his kids are out of the house. That's in an ideal world. That's what I think would be best for Nick Rekieta. I'm not his father, I'm not his dad, I'm not going to be his enabler though either. So I'll tell you right now, if I see him spiraling in a situation where he continues, to he seems, by public impression, or from what I learned privately, that he's spiraling downward into, like, this, repeating these same bad choices, I am not going to be an enabler ever. Not to him, not to anyone. And the reason I'm not going to be an enabler is because I'm a friend and I care about him. And I think that enabling him is the worst type of friend possible. You actually you're not, he's self-destructive, and you're just basically giving him more ammunition to self-inflict. And I'm not talking about Nick in specifically here. I'm saying whenever someone is dealing with a friend who has an issue, if you sit idly by and make them feel as if, oh, that's totally okay, I don't care, it's not my headache, I don't think you're a real friend. So that's why I'm telling you now. A lot of people think, oh, you're a Nick simp and you're enabling, whatever. No, the last thing in the world I'm ever going to do is enable any friend of mine, including Nick Rekieta. Because I care about him. I want him to be happy. I want his children to be happy. I laugh at those people who basically claim that the reason they're attacking Nick is because they're worried about the children, because I am fully aware that every one of these people who are attacking him certainly are not helping the children at all by destroying their father. And as soon as each one of these kids reach the age of majority, they will be knocking them as being the child of Nick Rekieta. So they don't care about them. They don't care about the kids, because they'll be the first ones to be attacking these kids once they reach the age of majority and they're no longer kids. So I don't want to hear speeches about how any of these people actually care about the children, because they don't. Now, I do care about his children, but I'm not going to tell you that I have a specific attachment to his children. I don't even know their names. I certainly don't want to see any innocent child be a victim of anything, of neglect, or God forbid anything worse. And for everything I've seen of Nick Rekieta, everything I've heard him say, I know he loves his children very much. And this is why I am confident, I don't know the future, but I am confident that he will do a complete course correction here. I am confident that he has the strength, the inner strength, and the outer strength to actually course correct. And I'm hopeful that he reaches out to countless people who are all too happy to help him, because other people, I'm far from the only person who worries about Nick Rekieta and genuinely cares about him. And there are a lot of people who may be far better equipped to help him deal with whatever struggles he has. And I certainly hope, for his sake, not for mine, I hope for his sake and for his children's sake, that he actually is able to deal with these issues. Now we come to this discussion about his legal situation. So that's life. And that's one part of life. And I'm going to put that in a corner here. Let's put a little pin on that, because there are other elements to life beyond that. But that's obviously first and foremost. That's just as far as physical health of Nick, physical and emotional health of Nick and his family. Okay? That's first and foremost. Now we start dealing now in that context, and let's assume that he actually does course correct. Now let's look at the situation of the legal problems that he's clearly facing right now. So he has these charges, and his wife has charges against them. And we can sit and try and do a legal analysis as to the likelihood of him escaping jail time. Because at the end of the day, what we care about is Nick ultimately being able to rebound from this whole situation, use this as a wake up call, which as I said, I'm confident he will use it as a wake up call. Don't know the future, but I'm very confident that he will. But that means part of that is he can't be in jail. His wife can't be in jail. And they are facing very serious charges. And with respect to that, I hope and I'm confident that he's going to get counsel for himself, counsel for his wife, that he will not be self representing, because self representing is crazy. Crazy. I know that there are people out there who are very skilled attorneys who would likely do it without much charge. Now, I don't know how familiar they are with Minnesota criminal defense, which that's a specialty of its own. But I think that it's important that he has counsel, because there's no way any person could handle this, no matter how skilled they are as an attorney. If they were the best Minnesota criminal defense attorney, they would not be skilled in representing themselves. You just can't do it. Doesn't work. Now, with that being said, let's look at the situation here. You have a first-time offender, not charged with any violence, thankfully. Thank God no one's a victim, like a direct victim. It's not like he ran someone over in a car or did something terrible with his fists or with a weapon to someone while in an inebriated state. So at this point, there's certainly no direct harm to any person that's actually visible. From the state's perspective, looking at this, he's a first-time offender who had a considerable amount of narcotics in his house. What we've seen in looking at the law on this is that there is a huge gray area there for him to actually get clemency from the court. We don't know how they'll deal with it, and certainly a large part of that would be that they see that he is taking these problems that he's facing very seriously. Frankly, if he wants his children, which I know he does, he's going to have to take this problem very seriously and do a complete course correction. He knows this. He understands this. But what I'm looking at here is, so now his objective is we want him to become the Nick that we remember from a couple of years ago. We want him to have a happy life and be able to give messaging that is insightful, creative, well thought out, well reasoned, and express himself as only Nick can. And frankly, most of us want him to fixate primarily on legal issues, because that's where he really shines. Now, again, I'm not his dad. I'm not his content creator. I'm not his producer. I don't collaborate with him very much on much, if anything, that he actually produces. And what he's going to produce is going to be exclusively Nick's choice, as it should be. But in order for him to be in a position to actually do that, aside from being clean, when we're looking at this overall scenario here, you can fight on the grounds. Let's assume they're not willing to just give him clemency and say, okay, bad boy, come back. Bad boy, do better in the future, and you're not going to have any punishment. Let's assume that let's assume. I mean, that's our hope that something like that would happen. But what he needs, and coming back to the life situation, is he doesn't need to fight this on a constitutional basis. He needs to fight this on a legal basis. He needs to fight this, and I'm not looking for him to like. And here's the problem when you start talking about constitutional law. There are so many illogical things as far as introducing constitutional law for in a general case, and then you have in Nick's case. Okay, because when you're talking about fighting something and facing your charges and facing off against them in a court of law, the way we've covered on LawTube countless channels, countless times, is that when you do that, when you face off or plead out, the public can start seeing that you've addressed this situation, that you've taken it seriously. As opposed to if you say, oh, well, there's a constitutional basis. This was a Fifth Amendment violation, a Sixth Amendment violation, whatever violation it is. You are dead in the court of public opinion. You are dead. This is not a remedy that helps Nick Rekieta. That doesn't help him at all. I mean, even if it were to be successful, which frankly, the chances of its success are really, really, really low. Really, really, really low. And that's after a very, very long time after you've already been exhausted and worn out physically, financially, emotionally, wiped out completely. Then sometimes you can win on a constitutional issue. I wouldn't want to wish that on my worst enemy, to have his neck in a noose while trying to win on a constitutional issue. That's crazy. That is suicidal. I'm fighting a constitutional issue. My lawsuit, Good Lawgic versus Merchan. You want to know what the major difference is there? That God forbid if I win, great, I help America. And if I lose, you know what? I'm in the exact same position as everyone else who's watching this and everyone else in the rest of the country. I'm no better, I'm no worse. Maybe I have a little bit more of a crosshairs on me from the Office of Court Administration, from the New York Bar Association. Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. But it's not like I end up in prison. It's not like if I lose this legal fight that like all of a sudden my life, my wife's life, my kid's life is all completely messed up any more than yours is. So it's like, no, here I can go fight a constitutional argument and say, I need to try and fix the world. That's why I'm free to do that, because the consequences, because even though I know that the chances of success, because these things take forever and are so tiring and so expensive, that I don't have to lose sleep at night that, oh my God, if I lose this, my kids have no dad for years. If I lose this, I might end up as bunkmate of someone named Bubba who's looking at me side eye every night. I mean, the consequences for me are a joke compared to what he's facing. So for me to get embroiled in a constitutional issue and try and save the world, which I do look at it that's what I'm doing. Okay, fine. The downside, if I lose, we all know that you lose these much more often than you win. You need to get recognition from the Supreme Court more often than not in order to actually get anywhere. How often does that happen? Once every 10 years? 3 times in 10 years out of the millions of situations? Maybe. So you're going to bank on that as far as I'm going to bank my life and my kid's life on that I'm going to stick out all this whole thing, have the whole financial destitution on paying lawyer after lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, fighting one court fight, another court fight at this level court, higher level court, another higher level court to try and overturn some stupid statute in Minnesota. I mean, that's crazy. Even if you know the outcome, even if you are a prophet, and I can tell you, hey, you're ultimately going to win this, and I can tell you what day you're going to win it. You're ultimately going to win this case on November 22nd, 2032. Who cares? How does that help you? You spend the next 8 years of your life in misery. It's crazy. Yeah, okay, fine. You help make Minnesota a better place going forward. Minnesota procedure, better place going forward for Minnesotans going forward from 2032 and onward. What the hell did that do for your kid? That help your kid? That help your life? That's insane. For just a garden variety drug possession charge, that all of a sudden this is going to become his raison d'etre, that he's going to stake his whole life onto this? That's crazy talk. And even if he wanted to go down that road, for this particular individual in this set of circumstances, it's stupid. It's stupid because in the court of public opinion, everyone will think, oh, you found some loophole to get, you actually are a psychotic, terrible mess who's a terrible person who found a loophole that 8 years later you end up getting exonerated, that you don't have to face criminal penalty for it. Who cares? People still looking like you're a slimeball, scumball, jackass, psychotic, terrible person. Oh, that managed to use the system to slither through and get where you want to go. How the hell would that help a Nick Rekieta, who's in public limelight day after day after day? How the hell would that help him on an emotional level, on any sort of level? It doesn't help him at all. You know how he wins? The way he wins is he gets clean, 100% clean. Narcotics, alcohol, completely clean. You know how he wins this? He wins this by facing his charges. And basically saying, look, you got nothing on me here. This is over. Maybe even pleading out, okay. And the court says, hey, this is the first offense. You show this is how you win in a garden variety narcotics case. You go to the prosecutor and you say, look, here are all the holes in your case. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. You throw them all the holes in their case and all the reasons that they're going to lose. Because at the end of the day, prosecutors, they care about having a high winning percentage. Is it my drugs? Is it Kayla's drugs? Whose drugs are? All these different things you can show at them. I wasn't even in the house. You're charging me with possession. Yeah, maximum point, it's like it's jointly shared by us that we cross over into this threshold. That doesn't make any sense. There's all sorts of different ways. And then you come and you negotiate with them. And you say, look, here, I understand you found drugs in my house. Here are the steps I am going to take to remedy this situation. Here's why it's such a difficult case for you to actually win at prosecution. This is why you need to let me go. This is why you need to let my wife go, because this is a terrible, terrible case for you. You want to put me on probation? You want to put me on monitoring? You want to put me on I have to check in here or whatever? Fine. But basically, to try to get out of jail time, while at the same time getting 100% rehabilitated from all of these different issues. And then go and tell the world that, hey, you know what? I made some really terrible F-ups, and I'm course correcting. Because I love my wife, because I love my children, and I want them to have happy lives. And I recognize they're my responsibility, and I recognize that absent a course correction, that cannot happen. Some people would say he needs to apologize. I don't know. Does he need to apologize to the public? Who's going to actually take that apology? Oh, he was apologizing to me. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I need to think about that part of it. But that's what the public wants to see, that Nick recognizes that he needs to course correct and that he is course correcting and that he's really trying to do that. And I think we will see that. I think that now we're at this is the time where we get frustrated waiting to see it happen. He has to sort out different things with respect to having counsel and when he makes statements, because he's in a very precarious situation in a million different ways that few people have ever been in. Few people you've ever met have ever been in, because there is the legal element to it, and it's conflated with the public with the public perception of him in ways that very few celebrities, or I mean, I know he's not like, he's not a Johnny Depp level celebrity. Very few people who are in the public limelight actually have to operate while they're still, if they have any interest in resuming their career rather than watching it die the way Amber Heard's died. So I do think he needs a public exoneration. And I think that even if he knew that he could get a constitutional victory in 6 months from now, even if he knew that for sure, that would not help Nick Rekieta. Not the way he needs help. If he knew he can win on a Fourth Amendment issue, search warrant, let's imagine a hypothetical. I don't know factually any reason to assume that the search warrant was defective. I don't know. But let's assume that you look at this search warrant and it's proven defective, and you were to win that way. Then a court. So what does that mean? How does that help with his public image at all? Because at the end of the day, everyone's going to basically think, oh, you found a loophole. How does that help him? Think that you're still going down this dark path. You're still going down the dark path, and you found a loophole to excuse that. It's basically like someone who, it's like whenever you hear a story in the court of public opinion, he's done. He's done. It's imagine a situation where someone confesses to the fact that they butchered 3 people and then leads the police to the bodies. And it's like, yeah, this is how I did it. Here's the murder weapon. Here's what I did to them, and walks them through step by step where it's obvious that they did it. And then basically uses some constitutional basis to keep out all the evidence and walk scot-free. Who the hell is looking at that person as someone they want to watch ever again? Rather than recognizing that, yeah, we have to let him go. You can't do jail time, but he's a scummy murderer. He's a slime ball. So how would that help Nick Rekieta? Someone walk me through. How does that help him at all? Because it doesn't. It doesn't help him at all. And yes, there is a bit of a difference between murder and an addiction. I understand that. I'm not saying it's the same thing. My point is the same way people look at him, the same way people would look at that person, and not just because he ends up skating from the actual conviction, that doesn't mean in the court of public opinion there's any change on him at all. And frankly, Nick Rekieta needs the court of public opinion to actually recognize him. He does. So that being the case, constitutional a constitutional basis to slip through the fingers of the justice system does not avail Nick Rekieta. So I want him to go and basically I want him to go into that prosecutor. I want his attorney, not him, actually, let's correct that. I want his attorneys to go into his prosecutor and basically spell out all the reasons why their case against him is crap. And work out some plea deal. Or perhaps he does community service. Helps people. He seems like he's very, very capable. We all know he's very capable of helping people. And yeah, I imagine it would certainly include rehab. That likely would be part of it. At the end of the day, I want him to make a commitment to himself that he's done with all of these intoxicants, both the legal and illegal ones. Assuming he's ever engaged in the legal ones. Like I said, I don't know. But we've seen, and this is a great example that someone mentioned, Robert Downey Jr. coming back from oblivion into becoming a superstar. We've seen Rush Limbaugh come back from his addictions into becoming a superstar. And I think we're going to see that with Nick Rekieta. But part of that process is not, oh, and he got out of jail because of a constitutional issue. Does that mean the constitutional issues should not be raised? No, of course they should be raised. You throw everything out there. I'm simply saying that if he wins on constitutional issue for Nick Rekieta, that's still a freaking loss. That's a loss. You go fight constitutional issues when you are the loser. That's when you do it. When you're the loser. At this stage of the game, to even really be thinking that that's the heart of anything is crazy. So, I am going to break down the constitutional issues because I think that because what I do is I do law tubing, and part of it is to sort of think through, does that make sense? What's right? What's wrong? But at the end of the day, we are talking about my friend, and I am talking about him actually getting his life straightened out. And I feel like at this point, he needs some straightening out, both within and without. He needs to straighten out himself first. And that way he can get straightened out in a myriad of different ways. So that means him making some healthy choices and and going through some tough times. And I believe he will. But I also think he's going to come out smelling like a rose when all is said and done. Because I believe in him. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a long fight for years before the public starts regarding him in any sort of way the way they did a couple of years ago. But I think he can do it. I think he will do it. But nowhere in that journey is, and he beat the criminal rap on a constitutional basis. That's not part of the equation. Now, we should consider the constitutional bases because there's such a public case, and there are a lot of constitutional issues here. But this is not arguments that I want to present in order to say, hey, hands off, he's going to win this on because of Second Amendment issues or Fourth Amendment issues. No, no, I never want to see that that's the road he goes. I never want him to actually end up arguing any of these constitutional issues. But that doesn't mean it's not issues that we, the public, should actually be thinking about. So in a different circumstance, or maybe you have some low life who I don't care about, who I don't know, who perhaps the only basis he has is the constitutional issue, and maybe it'll be fought then, and that perhaps the rights of Minnesotans won't be as violated and have their constitution basically walked all over. But for Nick Rekieta to become the test baby for fixing constitutional issues, I wouldn't wish that on him or anyone that I actually care about in this type of scenario. And especially seeing as how he needs redemption in the eyes of the public. And that undercuts the ability to get redemption. It literally makes it almost impossible for him to get redemption. So it's almost like it's like the only time that should ever be considered as an option that he's really going to be fighting about is if he's in a scenario that it's like, look, I'm going to be going away for decades unless I win on this constitutional issue. At that stage of things, most of the world is not going to be talking about Nick Rekieta anymore. That situation that's so far down the road that I'm confident we'll never get anywhere near that. So I'm going to be wrapping up this right now on Rumble. I'm going to be wrapping this up right here on YouTube. There is in the description. There's a link in the description which we'll share, which you can actually see. You can actually see what maybe my bots can share it in the chat for the locals. And on locals, I'm going to be, in fact, you know what? I'll put it in the chat right now. It is in the description already, but I just threw this out. The constitutional analysis discussion that I'm going to have now that we all have context, that this is not what I want Nick to be claiming. This is not what I expect Nick to win on. This is something that no one wins on. But these are important constitutional issues which face Minnesotans. That is what I'm going to be covering on locals. Master Phillips hitting me with 5 Good Lawgic memberships. Linda Richards saying, Joe, Nick is very fortunate, a friend like you. You're a better man than I. Well, thank you. And thank you, Master Phillips. You're awesome. King of recruitment. Nick is lucky they didn't inspect his ball. That's true. As an attorney, I slightly disagree. Some of the arguments raised by Barnes are typical pretrial motions, such as suppressing the search. Yeah, okay. I understand that. I'm simply saying this is not something that I want him to be walking. I haven't gone through his constitutional arguments that he raised. I heard an overview of them, but I haven't really been dissecting like what it was that he said. I do think that it's a healthy thing to him to basically, he can throw it out there, but I want this thing wrapped up long before that would actually be resolved by Minnesota Supreme Court. His online career is probably toast. He needs to worry about keeping his kids and himself out of prison. No one knows. Everyone thought that about Rush Limbaugh. Everyone thought that about Jordan Peterson. Everyone thought that about Robert Downey Jr. There's so many people out there who have bounced back. Well, when you say there is no rock bottom, hopefully he's hit it. I don't know. Your heart seems in the right place, Joe. It is all really sad. Yeah. Hi, Joe. I always wonder how anyone copes on bail and has to do cold turkey like Nick due to imminent testing. It's dangerous, in my opinion, honest opinion, impossible to come home and just not do anything. Any thoughts? We're all making assumptions that he's doing coke every single day. That's laced into that is that assumption, which I would not assume to be the case. I would not assume that to be the case. I don't know that he's ever done coke in the last Yeah, look, can't deny the fact that the search warrant reveals a large amount of cocaine in the house for someone who's never done coke. I'm not blind to that. I'm simply saying, and I don't think I don't know that he's not using it recreationally. No one knows that he's not using it recreationally. And even if he is, and I want to be 1,000% clear on this, I don't think he can ever use it recreationally again. Ever. Ever. What I'm saying is, laced into your question is an assumption that he's doing coke every single day. Look, I don't know. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, he can't do it recreationally. He can't do alcohol recreationally. I don't want to see him touch alcohol until his kids are all out of the house. Next time he should have a drink is when his youngest daughter gets married. Because, that's my personal opinion. What would be healthiest for Nick. But like I said, I'm not his dad. But I want to say this one more time. I will never enable. I will never be an enabler. Thank you for support. I don't know. I don't know enough about addiction. You could be correct. I don't know. I don't know, silly. Anyway, I'm going to end the Rumble and the YouTube here and now. Thank you all for joining me. Hope you'll join me over on Locals, where I'm going to break down, I'm going to be watching Barnes' video and breaking down point by point that he makes as to scale of 1 to 10, how good this argument sounds versus how weak it sounds. Versus we really don't know enough at this juncture, factually, to really know whether this has any legs or has phenomenal potential. But when I'm doing this, please understand, I'm not looking for. I don't think that is suppression. I don't think that suppression is. I don't think that that's helping Nick long term. Just saying. Everyone's making mountains on Mohill. I believe his career will be fine. A lawyer doing coke, allegedly, that's unheard of. Perhaps you're correct. All right, that's it. I hope you can join me over on. I'm going to give you the link over here one more time. This is where I'm heading over to Locals right now. And I thank you all for joining me on YouTube and on Rumble. And fare thee well. Goldspeed.